Good afternoon, Eswatini. It's 2 p.m. Central African time, and it may be a cold and drizzling day here in Babane. We are not in Miami, but we are certainly bringing you the heat from our Hospital Hill studios today. We want to spotlight a bold initiative that is emerging from the University of Eswatini. Despite financial hurdles, the Growth Lab for Africa is pushing forward with cutting-edge research that is aimed at transforming our economy. Business journalist Nelsiwe Mdlangamandla sits down with director Samuel Mhlanga to unpack how this research could reshape Eswatini's economic landscape, as well as lead Africa into a new era of development. Later on the show, we are going to be joined by economist Sanele Sibia to ventilate the key points behind the market indices of the day, breaking down what's driving moments in both local as well as global markets. Stick with us, it's going to be a hot one even on this cold Monday. Let's kickstart the show by looking at business news today. All right, for our first story, Business Eswatini is providing the necessary information to its stakeholders that will help them to take advantage of the opportunities under the African Continental Free Trade Area. The Chief Executive Officer, Inati Dlamini, said this when responding to what they are doing to sensitize businesses about the agreement, since the Minister of Commerce, Industry and Trade, Honorable Mangoba Khumalo, says for now it is only the fridge factory that is in Matsapa that is trading under the agreement.
I'd like to say that firstly, as a private sector, we are fully aware of it, and we are fully aware of the opportunities that this instrument brings to the country, and we are increasingly of late alerting our members and equipping them to some degree for them, and also encouraging them to take advantage of this expanded market in Africa. But as you will be well aware, as with any new initiative or market access initiative, as it were, this instrument, it really takes time for companies to align themselves to that, and I would argue, based on what we have seen, that companies are busy trying to ready themselves. We know of one or two already that are trading up using this instrument already, even though I won't mention their names, but we are really encouraged by that. And also we are keenly aware that some companies that have already registered with ERS, Eswatini Revenue Service, who have also stated that now they are ready to participate in this trade agreement. But obviously, and as everyone has seen, the readiness aspect of it is taking a little bit longer than we had envisaged. And for us as Business Eswatini really is to keep on encouraging these companies to say, please, get ready. The country is ready for that, for this expanded market.
Out of over 370 businesses that had applied to exhibit at this year's trade fair, just above 250 were able to exhibit during the 10-day event. The manager of domestic trade at the Eswatini Investment Promotion Authority, Sipesihle Ngabinde, said this when giving an overview of this year's trade fair.
The trade fair, which started on the 31st of last month, came to an end today. The 10-day event, according to the Eswatini Investment Promotion Authority, had targeted over 50,000 visitors, over 250 exhibitors, including 20 foreign exhibitors, with 40 million in direct economic activity. Sipesihle Ngabinde, the domestic trade promotion manager at APA, says they have surpassed their target.
It is our aim basically to share what we have as a country either through exhibition and also dissemination of information. So I think for the seminars side, I will say what we need to do much is to try to squeeze about 2 seminars per hall per day. So I think this year we trialed on 1 seminar per hall per day. If you remember well, we had 2 halls where we hosted seminars. So I think to make it better, we have to ensure that we have more companies doing presentations through seminars.
Different exhibitors say the trade fair was a good opportunity as it increased their reach to their intended market and sectors of society.
Starting with the youth, maybe, who are going into entrepreneurship, we call them startup companies. We have a business incubator at the Royal Science and Technology Park where we're trying to support them, understand the basic principles of running a business, but also we're trying to build capacity around the technical skills that they may need in as far as going into business is concerned. But also, as they are going into business, they may need hosting services for their data. We have a national data center that we also were happy to see a lot of people inquiring about, particularly companies.
As a part of the Youth Chamber, we consolidate a lot of information from events such as these to share to the youth. So what we were doing is we were collecting information from different stakeholders, from what they were exhibiting, any new initiatives that they have that include the youth. And from there, then we'll find a way as the Youth Chamber, because we work with the youth in the different chapters. So that's where we'll be able to disseminate the different information and also on our social media pages.
FAIR has enabled us as the Youth Council to ensure that we impart knowledge, we impart certain skills among our young people on how they can position and align themselves with opportunities and resources and tap into resources and take up space as they seek to develop themselves in their different areas of interest. It enabled us to even provide a platform for our beneficiaries to market their products.
The Eswatini Investment Promotion Authority says the International Trade Fair also targeted 150 million in trade opportunities, translating roughly to 3,000 job opportunities. For Market View, Nelswin Langamandla, Vuminkosi Nzinisa, Manzini.
That is how we wrap up our business news to start the show. We'll go for a net break. A discussion between Nelson Langamandla, our business journalist with the University of Eswatini, the Growth Lab, will be underway after the break.
Be sure to catch Business Watch every Wednesday between 2 p.m. to 3 p.m, where we feature the latest updates on business news, market trends, and exclusive interviews with industry leaders, as well as insights on emerging small and medium enterprises in the commercial sector. Business Watch, your business leader.
Welcome back. We're getting into our Enterprise Watch segment now, where despite the University of Eswatini facing financial challenges, a new wing, which is the Growth Lab for Africa, was established at the university last year. The director, Samuel Mhlanga, says their mandate is to do cutting-edge research that will help Eswatini and the people of Africa to grow their economies, enhance individual well-being, and achieve national development through technical change as well as structural transformation. Business journalist Nelson Langamandla sits down with the director to find out how the research they will be conducting is going to change the country's economic landscape.
What necessitated the Growth Lab director? What happened, or what did you notice that made UNESCO to say we need to have such a lab?
In 2023, some colleagues published results on productivity and reallocation of resources, between firms. This is a very, very micro level, study, involving all firms in manufacturing in the country. The results showed a decline of negative 3.6%. And that is if you are assuming, the producers of these products were not charging any markup. You introduce the markup issue, things changed. It moved from negative 3.6 to negative 11.4 per year. And that is a very, very big number. The devil, let me use a very bad word, the devil behind these numbers was capital. This was the time in the 90s when capital was just moving out of the country. We would even call, these firms that were leaving the country fly-by-nights. They were going back to South Africa. So hence this number. As you'll see below, we're saying more work was carried out looking at just labor productivity alone. Labor gave us a positive number of 2.67. And if you think about the 2.67, and then you think about, real GDP growth, which was 3.1, it would linger around that 3.1. They are moving together in any country in general. If you want to know how a country is growing, just look at their labor productivity. It's going to tell you. In most cases, not in all of them, in most cases it's going to tell you if the country is generally growing or is declining.
Speaking of doing research, how important is research, especially in entrepreneurship? We know that in the country there are a lot of young people who are showing interest in entrepreneurship.
Research is fundamentally important in every field of interest, really. And we're saying, entrepreneurship will thrive well if the operating environment provides space for technology diffusion from one point to another between people, among, countries and so on and so forth, as well as space for the readiness of economic participants to adopt such technologies. When we talk about, these economic participants, we're talking about employers. They need to be interested in this. We're talking about workers. They need to be interested in this. The same thing applies to civil society.
As you are speaking about research, SA Park and the Royal Science and Technology Park comes into mind. How are you going to work with these institutions that are already in the research field as you are doing your work?
You read my mind. Let me start with SA Park. SA Park, we have approached them to say, let's collaborate, guys. They said to me, for now we are collaborating with the research center at VM. And I know how it operates. So there's no clashes between the lab, the research center, and the SEPAC. So we're moving in that direction of collaborating our work. Now, with the RSTP, it's a very, very interesting question when it comes to those who are already in partnership with them. Formal partnership in the form of an MOU. And secondly, the acting CEO is part of the lab.
It is interesting, Director, that you are touching on the public lecture which you had last week, which was looking at the impact of financial frictions, especially on entrepreneurship and innovation. How is this research that you are doing going to help the entrepreneurs as they try to find the finances to start their businesses?
It's very, very interesting. You see, the issue of finances in any developing country, in fact, even in developed countries, is a problem for entrepreneurs. In our case, we're trying to package a product that is going to capture the principle of innovation. Because we don't, as a lab, we don't do the innovation, but we facilitate the innovation by these young people. Especially we're concerned about the graduates that are leaving our graduation arena here, with 2-1s, first classes and things like that. And the next day you find them somewhere in the streets of Manzini, jobless. These are the people we want to target very, very strongly. I'm glad that VOG team, just next door, is doing almost exactly that, but they are focusing on, technical talent to make sure that our graduates don't really crowd the streets of our urban areas. So that's where we are. For the lab, we are concerned about the adoption of technology. There are technologies out there. We want to determine what the textile industry, for instance, that's a classic example. What makes the textile industry, bloom in countries? Which technology does that kind of work? How can we entice our entrepreneurs in the country to adopt those? those technologies so that we can change the direction and dynamics of productivity in the country.
How are you going to ensure, Director, that the documents that you are producing or the research that you are doing is going to be a document that's going to make an impact and change the lives of entrepreneurs and small and medium enterprises? We have seen a number of documents being produced and they end up, I would say, collecting dust, and they don't really help their intended beneficiaries or those that are meant to use them.
It's an interesting question because we need resources for this to happen. With no resources, really, it's just a talk shop. And personally, I hate talk shops. What we're doing now, we've accepted the fact that for the lab to move forward, we need someone amongst this team who's very good in marketing. The skills are available. We have no problem with the skills. But we don't have, a team that connects us to where the jobs are, for us to get them done. We want to focus on our country, a country that we know very well, which is Eswatini, and then upscale these, our successes to the other African countries. We have people in those areas. We'll share these results with them and things like that.
In as much as Director, we are appreciating the work that you are trying to do, but we know that the University of Eswatini is facing financial challenges. Are you even going to complete this research?
Yeah. Well, maybe if you are going to fight any battle through research, you are likely to win in the context of your battle. Research, especially in our case, is data-driven. We get the data, we know how to hammer it. And I was working on something, in the last few days, trying to see, to understand the size of our country. We're a small country, landlocked, but very much open to trade. How many other countries are of our size, landlocked and things like that? I discovered that, there's 16 of us in Africa alone. We have small landlocked open countries in the Caribbean. We have them in the Pacific. If the results from Eswatini can generalize to those similar countries, that's a win for us. And we are likely to win because, there are common challenges for these countries. Issue of transportation cost. There's the issue of infrastructure to move from where you are to the ports. You have to go through other countries. There are all kinds of legislative constraints. There are these similarities. If you find a negative 3.6 in Eswatini, you are likely to find a similar number in a country of your size.
Thank you, Director, for that response, but I still haven't got my answer on how you are going to be financed as an institution. How are you going to get money to do this kind of research, which is very, very important, as you explained, to help the country, especially to help the economic situation of our country?
Okay. Maybe I somehow I missed that part. Yeah. Right now, we're carrying out this research. I think, as we speak, we have about at least three proposals that have been sent to financiers. We just look at open calls for research funding. This funding, which I think it lapsed last month from the UK, is by PEDL, which is it's a DFID wing that finances research based on firms. There's another one at STEG, which is structural economic transformation, that kind of thing. We've submitted proposals. That's what we do. We submit these proposals and wait for the response. But what we're targeting right now, we've discovered that the EU finances a group of countries, and we think we can benefit more if we get funding of that kind, if we are saying we want to serve Africa. Because if in one project. We have Eswatini, we have South Africa, we have Lesotho, the entire circle. Then for us, that's a great win. It's a we're targeting those. We know UNISWA doesn't have an awful lot of resources. We have to get those from third parties.
Thank you so much, Director, for joining us on Market View. We wish you the best of luck because we see that the work that you are going to do is going to change the landscape, especially for innovators and entrepreneurs. We are hoping that you will be able to secure funds.
Welcome back. Let's take a deep dive into the financial markets where we unpack the latest movements as well as dissect the forces shaping our global economies today. It's been a turbulent day for the US and the Asian markets, while the Europe holds firm with moderate gains. Back home, South Africa's markets are showing upward momentum and Eswatini's markets remain steady. We want to look at everything that I've just touched on with Sanele Sibia, who is in studio today. Sanele, welcome to the program. A very good afternoon to you. Really, really interesting what is happening within the financial market space today. I want us to start with the U.S. markets. Nasdaq taking a heavy hit today, down more than 2.5%. What is the heart of this decline?
Thank you, Mr. Nxumalo, and thank you for having me. So when we are looking into the U.S. markets, what we are seeing there, Nxumalo, is the fact that, number one, maybe we need to alert the viewer that these are Friday's numbers because the numbers are yet, the markets are yet to open in the U.S., Eastern Standard Time. But what is happening there was the worrying job numbers that came out on Friday last week, are really just signaling that we may not necessarily be on the right growth trajectory, and it might also signal that, monetary policy has been a tad bit too late to come to the party when the economy has already taken that hit. So that's what we are waiting for. But when you're looking at the futures numbers, the numbers that are coming in earlier today on the futures market, they are showing signs of rebound because we do expect the Federal Reserve Bank to cut interest rates this probably next week. And what we are looking for basically is the depth of the cut. Is it going to be a 25% basis point or a 50 or a 100% basis points? So that's what we are looking into. So we're waiting for inflation data to come out this weekend and give us that kind of movement. But these are the lowest numbers we've seen, I think, in over 2 quarters. And that was the situation last week across all markets when those jobs data came out of the US.
Well, could we say these are early signs of a deeper market correction?
One would say that markets are somehow pushing the Federal Reserve Bank to come in and actually help us correct the situation. We've been on this very high interest rate trajectory for a long time now. So eventually, what goes up must eventually come down. So markets really are just a bit anxious on seeing how we are going to really manage this normalization drive, going back to interest rates that are somehow feasible.
Yeah, much to irony and against the odds, the European markets today on a positive territory, the FTSE 100 in particular. What we are seeing here is a very, very, decent rise. What's underpinning this resilience, especially in the face of wider global uncertainty?
Oh, yeah. What we know with the European markets, if you look at it across Europe, we know that in August, the Bank of London, Bank of England did cut interest rates, and also as well in Germany and France through the Eurozone, the European Central Bank cut interest rates way back in, July. So we are expectant of another rate cut this week coming through from the European Central Bank. And the Bank of England is actually expected to follow suit sometime next week. But what we are waiting to see this week is just that inflation data is going to come out and really just give us a bit of direction in terms of the European markets. But it seems the European markets are able to break rank from, following the US markets. So that's what we are seeing there in terms of those numbers and that positive growth, just rebounding from the losses we saw last week.
Yeah, from all red in the US to all green in the European markets. The Asian markets, what we are seeing there is a slide that's continual. The Hang Seng on a 1.4% dip today. How much of this is tied to, say, China's economic headwinds, and what might this signal for the broader Asian economic landscape?
Yeah, I think most of the story, like you are saying, it's mostly the China story, what we are seeing them. More especially if you come into Shanghai, that's now more indicative of what's happening, especially within main So we know that China is actually faced with an issue of trying to find growth from elsewhere, from somewhere, and the growth figures coming out of China really do show that we are moving towards a deflationary situation, and also the mortgage situation is not increasing. And now if you look at car sales and quite a number of manufacturing data coming out of the mainland, it does show that there's been that decline in terms of the car sales, manufacturing output, and all of those things. So overall that region is a bit in a tumultuous type of waters, but we do expect that if we can get that growth story in China fixed, we should actually expect to see Hong Kong, that's the Hang Seng and the Shanghai rebounding. And then when you come into Japan, the Nikkei, the most of the issues there is to do with what's going to happen internationally in terms of the interest rates in the US, and also a bit of growth worries within Japan, and seeing how they're going to manage this positive interest rate territory that they've shifted into at the beginning of the year, together with propping up the yen. And it seems the yen is becoming relatively stronger, but not that stronger today.
Yeah, what an interesting economy. Let's come closer to home. In South Africa, some solid gains on the JSE All Share Index. I'm wondering which sectors or, say, companies are, rallying at the forefront of this development. And perhaps the question then becomes, is this momentum sustainable?
When we're looking into the JSE, what one would expect is, remember earlier on we were at 84 in terms of the volumes, 84,000 on average in terms of the volumes of shares that have been traded there. But what we are seeing now is we are just tethering around the 80 to 81 type of mark, purely because the markets are still waiting to see whether we are coming out of this very hard money environment this week. And what we are seeing there is, we know the inflation in South Africa came back to very close to the midpoint, around 4.5%. So that's indicative of the fact that the Reserve Bank of South Africa is actually expected to cut interest rates. But what we are looking forward to is what the US does. So that's what mostly the markets are responding to. Until and unless we start seeing that positive picture in the US, that's what's it called, the definitive picture, the definitive move, then we're going to see markets move. But in terms of the sectors, we are a resource-based economy this side, and that's where the monies are going to go into the resources. That's why I would bet for this time around. And also considering the price of gold, if we look into those commodities, you will see that gold is still sparkling above the 2.5 mark. So that actually helps companies like your Anglo Gold and your Anglo Gold Americans, those type of companies. And then if you look into the price of Brent crude as well on commodities still, you will see that the price of Brent crude is actually tethering at a very low level, signaling signs of an impending demand deficiency, which might actually push the economy back into the type of recession. So we're not necessarily going into a recession, but we know there are worries in the market about output, in terms of output and demand. So that's what is indicative there. Because one would ask, why are we seeing such movements when the geopolitical tensions are actually getting worse by the day, not necessarily getting averted by the day, but because of deficient demand, that is where we are in terms of the price of Brent crude.
Interesting indeed. Now that you've touched on the commodities, I want us to step foot here on our very own soil in Eswatini. What we are seeing here is that markets have remained flat. And I suppose while they remain flat, much to what you normally say, Sanele, is that sometimes stability can tell us more than movement. And it's making me wonder, what is driving this calm?
My analysis of the issue and research that I've done a long time ago is, I think it's more the laws of the country, with about, all asset, what do they call, deposit-taking companies need to invest 30% of whatever they've gotten domestically. So that's where you see that's where the money that just gets invested in there, and it just stays there, because there is lack of a diversified portfolio domestically. So it's either you put your money in property or you put your money into stocks and shares, and then what you do there is you just become a dividend investor, because the money needs to stay there.
What is fueling the strength of the Lilangeni gaining ground against the US dollar as well as the euro?
It has to do a lot with the interest rate dynamic. There's an inverse relationship between interest rates and, the money holdings that you see in the markets. So if the markets are basing for a decline in the interest rates in the US, then that means we are going to see a more of a shift from those interest-bearing assets in the US, like your dollar and treasury yields.
Yeah.
We're going to see that one shift down, and that speaks to the decline in the demand for such deposits, and then that's somehow increasing the strength of the domestic currency together with the trade dynamics there.
Well, certainly right on the mark. It's 14:30 Central African time. We want to thank Sanele first and foremost for providing these invaluable insights, and we want to thank you for tuning in and staying with us until this very moment. We've come to the end of the show. Enjoy this cold Monday. Make sure that you're warm. We've tried to keep you warm at least. Have a good afternoon. Bye-bye.